We asked multiple students here at UCLA, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the term ghetto? Many replied with poverty, gang violence, drugs, undereducated, and lack of resources.
So the question becomes, how did these stereotypes start, and more specifically, what are their origins with relation to Black communities? The term first became associated with the Black experience in 1910 as the formation of racially segregated residential communities skyrocketed, and the usage of the term continued to gain momentum in the 1960s and 70s as the civil rights movement began to further be advanced and televised. But why do we care? Stereotypes associated with terms like ghetto attribute to the lens with which we view Black communities. The history of the formation of Black communities plays the greatest role in our understanding of the origins of these social determinants.
Black communities outside the South were shaped by the Great Migration of Black people to new areas. As more Black migrants settled in new communities, white populations would move out, making these communities all Black. These communities are then stigmatized as slum neighborhoods and characterized by resulting infrastructural neglect.
Restrictive covenants played a major role in the segregation of Black and white communities. In certain neighborhoods, property owners and real estate operators came to their own consensus to deny Black Americans rights to buy, rent, or lease houses, striving for an all-white and safe neighborhood. Similar to restrictive covenants, redlining denied Black Americans from receiving mortgages, insurance, and even health care in white neighborhoods, effectively preventing the integration of Black individuals. Even if a family was especially affluent or respectable, they still wore the badge of color and were expected to stay in the Black Belt. Without the freedom to choose where to live, Black Americans were forced to house together in neglected regions of the city, which is how the formation of chocolate cities began.
The struggle for equal opportunity to housing continued into the 1960s with policies passed by FDR. The New Deal was a series of policies which led to the creation of programs such as the Federal Housing Administration. These policies continued to employ restrictions on the formation of Black communities. For example, the FHA discouraged the distribution of home loans in quotes to areas infiltrated by inharmonious racial groups. In practice, this instilled the idea that African American communities posed a threat to white investment. The lack of access to housing opportunities resulted in overpopulation of Black communities, contributing to the limitation of resources available.
The wealth gap between Black and white Americans can be sourced back to the lack of resources offered in their communities. The governmental neglect forced many that were already struggling financially into more debt as they were not offered the same job or educational opportunities as white communities. Today, African Americans only own approximately 1/10 of the wealth of white Americans. Regardless of their education, marital status, age, or income, middle-class fragility continues to be especially apparent in Black communities because of the instability of resources.
The war on drugs had a devastating impact on Black communities. Black people in urban, lower-income communities were targeted and criminalized for drug crimes. Currently, Black Americans make up 30% of all drug-related arrests, despite accounting for only 12.5% of all substance abuse users. Felony drug charges exclude Black people from opportunities for employment, education, and health benefits. Thus, the war on drugs has resulted in the creation of a permanent Black underclass of Black people with few educational or job opportunities as a result of mass criminalization.
One of the lasting effects of the war on drugs has been the occurrence of mass incarceration, which arguably reinforces the image of perpetual racial inequality that continues to shape Black communities. 1 in 4 Black millennials have had an incarcerated loved one before they even turned 18. And African American children across generations have more than twice the odds of having an incarcerated household member as white children.
Mass incarceration of family members result in increased residential instability. If the breadwinner of the household is being incarcerated, it contributes to the increased wealth gap that is observed between African Americans and their white counterparts. Overall analysis of mass incarceration emphasizes the importance of having a better understanding of not only the events that lead to mass incarceration, but also how the dynamic of this issue has had and continues to have ripple effects on several other struggles present in Black communities.
The fundamental racial stigmas commonly used to define Black communities are a byproduct of the factors that pushed for the creation of chocolate cities, whether that be rooted in push and pull factors from the Great Migration or government policies that promoted segregation. The main point is that issues prevalent today all have historical ties to the formation of Black communities. Therefore, to employ effective measures to combat not only our biases when addressing Black communities, but also the issues present, we must first understand the problem from its root in limited resources, opportunities, and racial discrimination.